So as we all know, the Baltimore Ravens beat the Patriots on Sunday Night Football this week, and coming out of that game, all the talk is about Lamar Jackson. We're talking about him as an MVP candidate. We're talking about all the teams that passed on him in the NFL draft, which it should be noted the Ravens did twice. And also, we're asking the question that it seems like we always ask when anyone sort of upsets the norm in sports, which is, what will his legacy be? Now, at first, there's the obvious answer. NFL teams might be more willing to build around a run-first quarterback if Lamar Jackson has sustained success in the league. But to look beyond that answer, that's where we'll really find what I think could be his most sustained impact on the league. Now, specifically to find what I think could be Lamar Jackson's biggest impact on the league, we need to look at John Harbaugh and the Ravens coaching staff. John Harbaugh was hired by the Ravens in 2008. He had been a special teams coach for 9 years before that with the Eagles, and then he was a defensive backs coach for 1 year. In the same offseason that Harbaugh was hired, the Ravens drafted Joe Flacco. Now, if you've ever watched Joe Flacco play quarterback, he is the closest thing we have to the complete opposite of Lamar Jackson. He is tall, he is burly, he does not move, he only looks to throw ever. You're seeing that play out with the Denver Broncos horribly this year. But the Ravens drafted Flacco in 2008, and for the first decade of John Harbaugh's coaching career, Joe Flacco was his quarterback. He built an offense around Joe Flacco. Now, discussing Joe Flacco here is important because last year, which was Harbaugh's 11th as a head coach in the NFL, the Ravens' offense transformed. They benched Flacco, they brought in Lamar Jackson, and they decided to completely shift schemes. They started running more power plays, they stopped building around pocket passes, and they embraced quarterback runs to a point where they're actually a focal point of the Ravens' offense now. And this whole sort of offensive transformation with the Ravens is remarkable because it happened without a head coaching change. John Harbaugh kept his job, but he overhauled his offensive coaching staff. He hired Greg Roman as offensive coordinator, and he decided that he was going to go all in on doing what his quarterback could do instead of focusing, like so many teams do, on what their quarterback can't do. In other words, John Harbaugh was adaptable to his quarterback's strengths, a thing that most NFL coaches seem to have an aversion to doing. And this adaptability has opened the door for Lamar Jackson to show us just how special a talent he is. He's playing at an MVP level, and that's not an accident. With that adaptability in mind, we come to what I think could be Lamar Jackson's greatest impact on the NFL. I think Lamar Jackson's success as a quarterback has the potential to permanently shift the paradigm when it comes to hiring NFL head coaches. Now, if you're familiar with the NFL head coaching process right now, it's basically a lot of NFL owners looking at whatever the league's shiny new toy is at a particular time and saying, I want that. Last season, the shiny new toy was Rams coach Sean McVay, who runs a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of play action, and his offensive scheme was talked about as something that could revolutionize the NFL. And that led to a flurry of coaching hires, such as Zach Taylor, such as Matt LaFleur, Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. And last year, the shiny new toy was Rams coach Sean McVay. His offense, which ran a lot of play action, a lot of pre-snap motion, was talked about as something that could revolutionize the NFL this year. And so there was a movement across the NFL to join this next wave of offensive head coaches or be left in the dust. And in the midst of that movement, this sort of gold rush on offensive coaching talent, a seldom talked about point was, what would a league coached by Sean McVay clones look like? As it stands right now, according to the Institute for Diversity and Ethics in Sports, roughly 70% of NFL players are black, while under 25% of NFL coaches are anything other than white. It's a disconnect that has existed for a long time, and it's actually a disconnect that the NFL introduced the Rooney Rule to try and solve. In 2007, the NFL introduced the Rooney Rule, and it was a rule that required NFL teams to at least interview, quote, ethnic minority candidates for senior football operations positions. So in theory, it should promote diversity and representation among NFL head coaches. The problem is, an NFL where every team is looking for offensive head coaches is inherently going to skew towards hiring white coaches disproportionately. So effectively, this movement towards offensive head coaching goes beyond what the Rooney Rule is really able to regulate. Now, to back up for a second, you might not see the connection between offensive head coaches and white head coaches, and it may not seem apparent at first, but it's actually pretty simple, so we can break it down here. Basically, the quarterback is the most important position in the NFL. It's the most important position in football at any level, really. And so to make your offense work, you need to make your quarterback work. And to make your quarterback work, it helps to have experience playing or dealing with quarterbacks. So if you look at football at any level, most quarterbacks are white. And with that comes most people knowing how to coach quarterbacks also being white, which as you ascend up the coaching ladder leads to most people becoming offensive coordinators or play callers being white. So how is Lamar Jackson going to fix that? How can one quarterback being talented change an entire league's way of thinking? Well, Lamar Jackson is giving us a blueprint to see how a team can succeed without some sort of offensive mastermind calling the plays. He's showing us how a team can succeed without a masterminded offensive scheme. He's showing us how a team can succeed with a head coach being willing to move away from whatever offense he has run for even as long as a decade, even through a Super Bowl run, because he has a player that's that talented. In other words, he's showing us the benefits of having adaptability in head coaches. John Harbaugh took a special player in the draft and he decided, you know what, I'll figure everything out later. And a year and a half after selecting Lamar Jackson, the Ravens seem to have figured everything out and they are reaping the benefits of that. Lamar Jackson could win MVP this year because of the benefits of that. So Lamar Jackson being as good as he is, and I do not want to take a thing away from Lamar Jackson in this video because he's really good. He's transcended. He might be a generational talent at quarterback. I'm talking about him changing the entire NFL right now. But him being as good as he is could serve as a sort of call to NFL teams that you don't need an offensive mastermind. Maybe instead of looking for the next Sean McVay, instead of hiring Cliff Kingsbury, who was 5-7 at Texas Tech last season and got fired, not to take shots at Cliff Kingsbury, but it's there. Maybe teams will look for a head coach who's a little bit more pragmatic, a little bit adaptable, a coach who's willing to say, here's what I have on my roster, here's how I can make that work, instead of saying, here's what I have in my head, what roster can I build to make that work? Because that's going to take inherently longer. In short, Lamar Jackson being good will raise the willingness of teams to hire defensive head coaches. And maybe, just maybe, being more willing to hire defensive head coaches will lead to a little bit more representation and diversity within the NFL's head coaching pool. And even if Lamar Jackson wins, 5 MVPs, 4 Super Bowls, and here's hoping that he wins at least most of those, I think that could be his greatest impact on the NFL when his career is said and done. Thanks for watching.